Nerds.
Nerds.
Will and I have returned. So
From whence we came.
we, we are here. Those of you who are watching on video later will see him already. But we were here with special guest Elijah Miller, who's a local artist here in the Piedmont Triad region of great state of North Carolina, and we'll be peppering him with questions about his art and how he got into art and all that here in just a minute. But
Definitely.
yeah, like just a word about why we're doing Zoom after all the studio recordings the last few weeks. Some sickness has been running through my family, so we're stuck with Zoom again. As I don't want to get Will sick and or his wife. So yeah, it's kind of that time of year, and I got four kids, so it's just going through the house. So yeah, that way you guys, neither of you will get anything from me. But this works well for recording too, so Zoom's not too bad. Um, so anyway, let's see. I guess we'll jump right into it. Elijah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Uh,
Oh yeah, no problem at all. I'm happy to be here.
yeah, I'm excited. So you and I met at I believe it was the Southbound Craft Fair, correct?
Yeah, Winston.
Yeah, yes. So it's one of the many, there's increasing number of craft fairs and arts and craft fairs here in Winston. And my wife had a booth at this one, and she's an artist as well, though in a different oeuvre. She does watercolor and checker work out, by the way, Laura Morales Studio. Uh, but I was there to visit her with my kids and took a walk around, and I saw Elijah's booth and I noticed his art. And right away that said comic book artist to me, just the kind of the art style, that caught my eye. So I came over and we started talking and eventually talked about you coming on the podcast. So that's how this happened. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
thanks. Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh yeah, no problem at all.
And as our listeners know, Mr. Boyer here is also a comic book artist. He's been drawing comic books since he was how old, Will, like 6 or 7?
Um, well, I started off doing stick figures probably at those ages, but I think I started doing my first comics at 9.
Okay, so legit like doing a strip and kind of playing around with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how about you, Elijah? Like, well, maybe before I get into the art question, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from? Are you from around here? Like, what's your story?
Oh yeah, well I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. My mom and dad was from Jersey, mom's from Maryland. So they met down here at college and I've been pretty much born and raised here all my life. I only have one other sibling, it's my older brother. Um, but yeah, born and raised in Greensboro, grew up here, went to school here. Yeah, so this is pretty much home base for me right now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and Will and I also, well, I didn't grow up around here, but Will did. Will's been here pretty much his whole life, and I've been here
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
2001. So
Okay.
I've been here most of my life.
It's still a pretty long time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was born here, but left when I was 2, and then came back when I was 18, and been here ever since. So
Uh,
Winston is home, as is I mean North Carolina. Well, cool. So Greensboro. Um,
yeah.
so did either of your parents have a love for art? Like where would you say your
Yeah.
love for art began? Like,
Mhm. Yeah, that it's one of those things. It was just kind of, for lack of better words, I guess it was just something I was naturally drawn to. Neither of my parents, well, I say they're creative in their own ways. My father wasn't an artist by any means, but he's somebody that definitely has like a lot of charisma, and he's also somebody that's pretty good when it comes to dealing with people, organizing events, things of that nature. Um, my mom, on the other hand, she works in nursing, but she is also for a while was a freelance writer. So she was like a ghostwriter. She'd write articles for people online and things of that nature. And I think between the two of them, I think my mom might have the edge on like the creative gene.
Hmm.
Because me and her, we shared, and my brother too, but like we shared a lot of the same interests. So like when I was younger and like we were getting into stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh or anime and cartoons, my mom a lot of the time was like watching those with us
Hmm.
because she kind of grew up watching a lot of those things that ended up influencing us. So like B movies, old cartoons, things like that. Um, type of stuff that I think my mom was the person who introduced me to like the Boomerang channel growing up because those were the
Oh yeah.
cartoons that like she watched. Um, and my father, even though he might not have necessarily understood all the stuff we like, he was definitely supportive in us being able to explore and enjoy these things. So I think the only show or only like thing my father wouldn't let me watch as a kid was like The Simpsons. But a lot of the other stuff, Yu-Gi-Oh and like Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, all that, Digimon, he was pretty cool about us like watching and interacting with that type of stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
nice. You and Will would have some stuff. I know you watched probably all of those, right? Will at different
Oh
points.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I also watch The Simpsons, so I've got an advantage, but I'm kidding, taking, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm similar to you, Elijah. My parents did not let me watch The Simpsons. I don't remember having a real strong desire to watch it, but yeah, that was one that was off limits.
Oh yeah, it was The Simpsons when I was around maybe fifth grade. Around that time, like later elementary, I was able to watch it. Like I used to tape all the episodes throughout the week when they came on. I think it was UPN at the time. Then the network like changed names like once or twice.
Oh yeah,
And then on Fox, they would release the new episodes. I used to record those because they had that animation domination block. And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Simpsons was the first TV show where I actually learned how to draw a character from the
Oh, that's
artist who drew
cool.
that character. And that was a pretty big thing for me. I forgot the name of the artist, wish I could remember, but at the end of a particular episode, he shows you how to draw Bart's head, like using
Ah,
shapes and everything, and breaks it down. And that was probably the only art tutorial I saw for like how to draw a character at that time. And in fifth grade, like I took that and ran with it. I drew Bart Simpson doing any and everything
You're not
that I
that
could
crazy
imagine.
artist drawing Bart Simpson all over Winston, are you?
Oh no,
Okay,
that
I'm
would be
kidding.
sick though.
nice. So that was like for me, it was Garfield. Like I was a big fan of um.
I was about to pick on you for Garfield.
Were you?
Yeah, but I'm interested where this is going now.
Well, no, I actually dabbled a bit in that was the first character. Like it didn't really go anywhere for me. But I dabbled a bit in drawing some panel comics because I got big into watching Garfield and Friends and then reading the Garfield comics. Uh Probably when I was like basically preteen, so
Okay.
similar age. And at the time I did a lot of it and then I just didn't go anywhere after like age 11, I think. But
I actually,
obviously, oh, go ahead, Will.
oh, sorry. I thought you were done. I actually thought that your parents didn't let you read Garfield. That's what I was going to pick with you about. The Simpsons, they won't even let you read Garfield. I guess I was wrong.
My mom wasn't a huge fan because he had a bad attitude all the time, she said. So,
Mm.
which I guess Bart certainly qualifies as that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, well, cool. Um, so you started drawing Bart. Now, at this time, were you reading comic books at all at that point, or was that your first intro into drawing, or like wanting to draw was through animation instead?
Well, I was definitely mm, well, I definitely been drawing up until that point because I started drawing when I was in preschool.
Mhm.
My first memory of drawing is after school in preschool on a whiteboard while I'm waiting for my dad to pick me up.
Mhm.
So I've been drawing since preschool, but as far as that goes, like the Bart Simpson thing, the first comics that I really started reading were, and this might go back to maybe my mom's influence, were newspaper comics, like strips. Curtis, Dagwood and Blondie, Brewster Rocket Space Guy, Over the Hedge. Um, there was a few more too. Trying to think of that one that had like the two birds. There was Zits, that was pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
So there was a few of them. That was probably my first. That was probably one like at home, reading comics. That was probably my first influence. And then when my older brother was in middle school, he started bringing home graphic novels from the library, and that's where I was introduced to manga
Mhm.
and American graphic novels. So I remember he would bring home things like Rave Master was the first one I remember. Um, Rave Master, because that one actually did have an anime. Um, that one had an anime that we watched later on. So it was cool. I got to see the illustrated story, then the animated version of it when that came out. And then as far as graphic novels, he started bringing home the Bone books by Jeff Smith.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that became a real big influence on me. And I actually think some of the flagship characters that I draw were influenced by the design from the Bone characters, because they're very simple and very recognizable. And I think the mop characters I do, when I look back, they really follow that template pretty, where it's like the whole form is simple. Maybe like only four different shapes really make up the character, four or five, and then they have like a distinct feature that kind of sets them apart. Um, but yeah, and then The Simpsons, because I was always watching cartoons and stuff. Um, and then I'm about to have to plug my phone up here in a second. Um, but yeah, I was always watching cartoons, so animation was always an influence. But it wasn't until that Bart Simpson, that excerpt from The Simpsons, that was the first time I actually saw like the artist break down how he built the character. When I was younger, there may have been like Chuck Jones and the Looney Tunes. They may have shown you like a few behind the scene things, but the Bart Simpson was like the first time it's like, all right, he's gonna sit down and draw it for you.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but like newspaper comics, then advancing to graphic novels and manga. And then down the line, I started reading some more American comics, like the trade paperbacks, but not those were probably the least of my comic book consumption because I already watched a lot of like DC and Marvel animations growing up. So I already had a familiarity with the characters. So I didn't necessarily, they weren't really the most sought out for me as far as comic books, but stuff like anime or like Bone, stuff that like I'd never seen anywhere else
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
the stuff that kind of drew me in more. Yeah.
Yeah, and Will, I think I've heard you talk about Bone and them
Right.
several times. Like, I think don't
Yeah.
you have some of them as well? I think, don't you?
Yeah, I've got the complete black and white collection. Um, but yeah, I have.
Well, it's cool. So that was in terms of artistic style, that was an early inspiration for you. Like you said, the Bone, or one that you feel like some of it was subconscious almost, where that kind of stuck with you. Just something about that style resonated with you.
Yeah, because it's something about those characters that just works. Um and like I say, it's the simplicity of them. There's not too many bells and whistles. They almost look exactly the same aside from like their heights and the clothing they wear, but each one of them was just very iconic. The personalities of them. Like Smiley Bone was like always happy go lucky. I'm trying to remember the other two's name. I think it was Phone Bone because it was the
Yeah,
one who had the T-shirt with the star on it. He was always like it was kind
that's
of like Eddie
Phony.
and Eddie almost.
Phony Bone.
Somebody's one of them's happy go lucky, one's trying to pull the scams, one's like more concerned about like the bigger picture of what's going on. But like, yeah, just simple characters and just seeing them drawn in black and white, being able to appreciate like the line work and stuff like that. But yeah, like just simple characters with such distinct and strong features. That definitely resonated with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at some bone images right now. So I'm familiar with it, but I'd not read too much of it myself. It's one of those many things I need to get caught up on. Well, I guess since you talked about that being an influence for your art, we'll take a moment here and hopefully our sound. I've had some issues in the past with trying to share screens while recording on Zoom, so hopefully our audio comes through all right. So we won't do it for too long, just in case we have some issues. Um,
Right.
but for in particular for the those that are watching this on video later, I wanted to show some of your art. So let me share screen here.
Oh yeah, actually, let me plug up my phone real quick.
Oh yeah, man. While I'm doing that, you go ahead.
Yeah.
I want your battery dying on us. That wouldn't be
Oh
good.
no, that would be tragic.
Yeah, it would be. All
There
right.
we go.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
So this is ElijahMillerArt.com. And so where does I'm curious because I know this is your Instagram handle, the Be the Influence BMSR.
Mhm.
Where does that come from? I was curious. Like
All right,
the
so
idea for it.
be the influence BMSR. What that comes from is when I was in high school, I was still kind of settling on a direction I wanted to go creatively because at that point I knew I wanted to be an artist. I knew I wanted to do something creative, and at the time, the big thing that I was into was streetwear and fashion.
Oh,
So
cool.
there's a lot of brands I was looking at, like LRG, Crooks and Castles, Black Scale, 10 Deep, um, Diamond Supply, quite a few of them. Some are around still, some aren't. But at the time, I thought the path that I saw for me was going to be, being like a streetwear designer and starting a brand and um, building that. So I was doing a lot of research. I was on a lot of blogs. I was researching a lot of brands and their origins and how they sustain longevity. And I felt like I just needed a name that would stand for something, or at the very least, represent something that people could stand for outside of just like a cool looking t-shirt or a jacket. So I'd have to say it was inspired by my favorite clothing brand, LRG, Lifted Research Group, because it was one of the first clothing brands I saw where not only did it have really good designs, but they also had messages intertwined with their designs that were very positive and consistent and uplifting. Stuff like adopt children, not styles, things like that. And it was very cohesive to me. It was genuine. So I wanted to be able to create a brand that was genuine and reflected messages that I believed in and not just like empty statements or slogans. So be the influence stands for, it really stands for being self motivated. And when I was at high school, that's a time where a lot of people are impressionable, a lot of people are following trends, a lot of people are doing things to express themselves. But, you know, a lot of times I'd step back and observe my peers, and I'm like, are you wearing that? Are you doing that? Are you talking like that because that's really what you want to do, or because you're trying to go with the grain?
Hmm.
And be the influences being self motivated to express yourself in ways that are genuine to you and not just falling in line with the pack, not just falling in line with the trends. So a lot of it is about embodying your motivation to do the things you want to do and not just blindly following the leader. Um, and the BMSR portion stands for breaking mentality, shaping reality. and that was designed to be like the slogan of the brand. Um, and what that speaks to as an extension of embodying your motive, as an extension of embodying your motivation to pursue your goals and your interests. Breaking mentality, shaping reality speaks to having to take risks and having to go against the grain or the status quo in order to create or manifest something that is special, you know.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's something that resonated with me because there's a lot of things. And I think it's funny, you know, even when you look at art history, there's a lot of artists and a lot of art movements that before they became recognized the way they are today, people hated them. Like I remember when I learned about Impressionists, it was like people hated Impressionist style painting because that's not how anyone painted. So you have this preconceived notion of how something's supposed to be done. And then for the people who pioneered that style, for them to make it what we know it as today, they had to basically push past that status quo, which is the breaking mentality part. And then by creating things in the way they wanted to, um, you know, they shape the reality. You know, this person says, don't paint like this, don't do that. I sat down and painted the way I wanted to, not because of what they were saying, but because what I was saying, you know, thinking, which is like to be the influence part. And then the end product, you have something you created in accordance with what you wanted to do. And that's the shape and reality part because now the thing is tangible. And that's pretty much where that came from. So I hope I explained that in the best way possible to where it makes sense. But yeah, essentially embodying your motivation to pursue the things you want, breaking through preconceived notions or stereotypes that may prohibit you from expressing things the way you want,
Mhm.
and then shaping the reality around you by creating and sharing the things you want to make. So that's pretty much like where the Be the Influence BMSR is about and where it comes from.
I like that.
Cool.
Do you still have dreams of maybe one day doing your own clothing brand with that?
Yeah. Oh
Nice.
yeah, for sure. That's something I actually want to push more this year. Is just branding Be the Influence more.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of went with like just Elijah Miller art or Elijah Miller illustration because the way I look at it now as opposed to back then I saw myself as like a brand designer, but I didn't look at myself as the artist. So now that I have immersed myself in being a creative for so long, I'm able to look at the idea of doing that brand as something that can be a part of the foundation I'm building. Um, so it's something I definitely want to push more this year is putting Be the Influence in front of people more and starting to get that to resonate. Yeah, so that's definitely want to start getting that on clothing this year now.
Love your website here, by the way. I was just looking at um those on the video will be able to see this, but for those that are listening, I have the about page. He has a meet the artist section, why I create, and very well designed. Like, and then you
Oh
talk
yeah.
about what you just spoke about, be the influence, BMSR.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's really cool, man. People get to see what you're about. And
oh yeah,
yeah, I like that you have your art kind of alongside of that as well there.
oh yeah. Shout out to Squarespace. They
Oh yeah.
helped me out.
It looks
Oh
great.
yeah.
So
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this is the right time to do it or not, but I wanted to ask you about this zipper face character.
Oh yeah.
Richard tells me that's the character that's going to star in your graphic novel.
Yes. So the zipper face characters are called mops. And essentially the mops are beings that have the ability to manifest using creative energy, they have the ability to manifest ideas and thoughts into tangible forms.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, and the graphic novel is gonna basically follow the misadventures that take place in their world, and I want to focus on I want to focus mainly on my first character, who's that purple guy you've seen in a few of the images. Um, his name is Nurk,
Okay.
and he's the first mop I fleshed out as an original character beyond just the drafting phase. That kind of had his own personality and kind of led the charge for the rest of the characters that I created afterwards. But yeah, he was the first one. Yeah,
Now,
and
yeah.
yeah, because it's kind of like that, but kind of like what I was saying before, is like how like the design for them for the most part is actually pretty simple, and then the round head, the zipper face, and the different shaped ears kind of are the things that kind of, I think stick with people, like the buggy eyes.
Oh yeah, and honestly, the when the mouth opens on this one, that is creepy. I will have to say, I'll give you some nightmares if you look at it too much. Just something about a lot of teeth that bothers me. I don't know if it's a shark thing or what. Like, but especially seeing the mouth open sideways like that too, or the is it a mouth? Is it even the mouth? Is that the right term for it in that world? Or
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
So will this be your first uh comic book that you've created, or have you created more before this, graphic novels or comics?
I've done I haven't done too much before this as far as graphic novels. Like I've done like a page or a strip here and there, but this would probably be the first one where I really flesh out a story about a character and kind of follow that to completion beyond just like maybe one page. Um, so this really is going to be like my first real graphic novel, and it's something that took me a while because I think when you say you want to draw comics, it sounds cool at first. And then you think about the work that goes into it. You think about the things you have to learn how to draw, not just the things you like to draw, and then the story. And yeah, so it kind of it was an intimidating idea for a while. And I think that's because at the time I didn't really have a realistic I had my expectations, but I don't think I was realistic about how to reach those, or I don't think I was really realistic about how to make that project more manageable. I felt like it had to be like, the 50 pages, all color, cover, everything. So it was intimidating up until maybe, I want to say maybe a year or two ago.
Cool.
Um, because I've always done like storyboards, I've always drafted stories, and I would always kind of get to a point where I didn't feel comfortable with what I did, and I felt like I have to do it over. Like this board's not going to work, this script isn't going to work, or maybe this is a better idea. So I definitely, I definitely took a lot of time just, I guess overthinking and not necessarily trying to be practical about it. And it wasn't until recently I was watching a YouTube channel that I like called Character Design Forge. And there was also Jake Parker, illustrator, who also has a YouTube channel. They both covered a similar topic. And that was essentially what's called like the minimum viable project. So, respectively, in both their channels and their videos, they talked about the minimal parameters you can create for a project you want to do so that you can execute it with quality but not be overwhelmed. And like something I can't remember which video or which channel, but they're like, you don't have to draw one piece for your first comic. Like, the first thing you do doesn't have to be like the greatest thing ever. So since then, I started thinking more rationally about how I could create a story that's fun, well executed, and stress free for me. And that's when I decided that I would, instead of trying to do like a 30, 40, 50 page thing, I said, you know what? How about we do 4 pages, 5 pages, simple story, um, limited cast of characters, and, you know, just run it straight through to the end, open, close. There it is. And that's how I've decided I'm going to approach the first one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I want to get that done before the Hickory Comic Con, which is actually on the 18th, I think.
Cool, cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I decided that I would do a short story, um, 4 to 5 pages with a cover, and I have the idea laid out. And it's just something that at this point I just have to, get back to the table and just start drawing. But it's going to be an adventure story because the main character Nurk, his occupation is adventurer. So
Nice.
yeah, so sometimes he has to recover things for people, sometimes he has to explore things for people. Um and it's going to be a story about him searching for something, and that seems simple, and he kind of bites off a little more than he can chew. So it's going to be about how he squeezes out of that jam to get the job done. And I feel good because I have the storyboards done for it. Um, and I feel a lot more confident about how the story's going to flow, how I could draw it. And I don't know, it's like, I feel like even though it took a while for me to get to the point where I had the right mentality to manage the project, I feel like I feel more excited than ever about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's great, man. I like the idea, like you said, of doing the more of a bite-sized chunk. 'Cause yeah, they get you, they build some confidence, right? Creatively, you're like, hey, also I got it done.
Right.
Instead of, like you said, have this mountain, like jumping straight to a graphic novel, like however long it is, 50 page or whatever. Because even I know many of at least the ones that I read, like I read a lot of the, I don't know if is trade paperback the right term, Will it? I'm not a comic book
Yeah.
expert. Will is definitely the expert, but like the DC and Marvel graphic novels, that was
Mhm.
kind of my introduction into graphic novel world. And I know they start out as issues, so it's like what, 10, 12 pages, whatnot,
Yeah.
at a time. And then eventually I'm assuming you'll probably compile them at some point. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
That's the plan. Because I could do multiple stories that focus on multiple characters within the universe. So it could kind of round out like how people see the characters, how their personalities are. It kind of gives, I think it could give people a broader perspective of how this world works. And then I could compile those into what we call it, like a volume or an anthology of sorts.
Hmm.
And then, I could wrap that up and give it to people. So if you miss the other ones, everything's right here. But yeah, that's pretty much how I plan to do it because I have another mob character, a character named Chauncey, who's a bounty hunter, and there's ideas I want to do with him.
Hmm.
And he was one of the first characters on my website, the one that was sitting on top of the dinosaur with the cape.
Yeah, I saw that. Hmm.
Yeah, so which one of my friends actually came up with the name. That was a thing where I drew the character, then I let my homie color it,
Hmm.
and then I asked them to name it. So that's where Chauncey came from. So I definitely want to do some stories with that character because I feel like he could kind of show people a different side of that world that you might not see if you're following Nurk around.
Hmm.
Yeah, so but I definitely plan to do a story with Nurk first, and then hopefully Chauncey will be next up. And then I actually do have a third story in mind that I also have storyboards for, but it, as I started doing the boards, it's like the story went, and then I realized this story isn't meant to be a short story. So I kind of put that one on the back burner to focus on the more bite-sized ones I want to do with these with my other characters. And that was another thing that kind of, I don't want to say it slowed me down, but when I realized that particular story wasn't going to be suited to this format I'm doing, I decided to put that on the back burner. So yeah, definitely gonna start with like the shorter stuff like Nerk Adventure Story, and then maybe do some stuff with the Chauncey character, and then maybe I could cycle back to because the other story I had in mind was actually an origin story. So that one's more about where they come from and how things are the way they are. So that one definitely has needs a lot more fleshing out than just a couple of pages. Um, so yeah, like all these ideas spinning in my head, and sometimes it's like I'm just trying to hold on to everything, and then sometimes I realize, all right, you gotta let this one go for now, you gotta let that one go for now. Let's just focus on this and get to the goal. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. Just focus on one, get to the goal, and I took like 2 weeks off of work for my birthday, so I could like do fun stuff but focus on the work I want to do. So in that time, I definitely plan to pull the storyboards out and hammer out that story because it's just been like itching at me for so long now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, guys, keep an eye out for that. Like follow Elijah. Obviously, you have his website, ElijahMillerArt.com. And then on Instagram, let me make sure I get this correct here. Is it at Be the Influence? You can probably spout it off.
Oh yeah. At Be the Influence _ BMSR.
There we go. And is that where
Yeah.
you're most active social media wise?
Yeah. Most active there. And I Facebook sometimes trying to get back into that because I realize there's still some engagement there. Um, and then just started messing around with Twitter last year, and that's actually been more fun than I thought. I have to give that platform more credit. But definitely most active on Instagram, I'd say. Trying to get better about regularly updating. I think I just posted like a drawing video or a video of me painting like the other day.
Nice.
Um, yeah, but I'm
Unfortunately,
trying to get better at feeding content.
Elijah, you mind coming back with us for just a minute here to finish up? We're up at our 40-minute limit here, but
Mm.
we're gonna restart and just do a kind of a little closing section there and say our goodbyes. Okay, guys, we're back here. We were kind of getting on a roll there, so decided to go blow past the 40-minute mark here. We're gonna talk for at least a 10 or 15 minutes more with Elijah here. I believe Will had a few questions for him before we part ways. Will?
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of time left. Elijah, did you want to talk about maybe whether or not you had a college art education, or maybe if you're going to self-publish or not, or maybe you'd like to talk about the tools and process that you use. Those are all
Um,
things I was interested in anyway.
oh, like the tools and process. Yeah, for sure. I think that might kind of tie into the art education too. Because when I still thought I wanted to be a fashion designer, I went to be an art student at North Carolina A&T State University, and that's where things broadened out for me. So like I started when I was there, I started like a lot of acrylic painting, a lot of painting on canvas, found objects, and um, from there, I had transitioned. I think by the second semester, I had started pushing into illustration, and um, pen and ink was always a go-to for me. Pen and ink or brush and ink. Love inking um, a lot, and that's still one of my main tools to this day. If I could get a jar of India ink, Speedball makes great India ink. I love theirs. I think Dr. P.H. Martin's makes a good one too, but India ink and a good brush or a pen, I can do that all day. Watercolors are big for me. Um,
Yeah, I saw
because
that. Sorry,
yeah,
just to chime in, I saw that on your Instagram. You had a time lapse video doing watercolor. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
oh yeah, watercolors were a big one for me because when I decided that I really didn't want to be like a painter like that, which part of it came from having a painting class with a professor I didn't like, so that just kind of deterred me from it. Um, but yeah, watercolor because like a lot of my friends at that time that I was making art with, like in school, a lot of people had like go-to color mediums like color pencils, acrylic paint, markers, whatever. So watercolor was the thing I found that just seemed to work for me because it goes well with pen and ink. It pretty good for illustration, and for some reason a lot of people hate it because it's hard to control, but that's kind of what I like about it. The medium has a level of agency. There's times where it's going to do things it wants to do, and you kind of learn to manipulate letting it do its thing to your advantage. So I'm like, yeah, pen and ink, watercolor, and right now I kind of go between two different watercolors because I really like the pans right now in the trays. And I might have one around me, maybe not, but as I really need to clean the studio. But yeah, like I use Winsor Newton watercolors, and I also use Marie's watercolors, and those are like the ones I go back and forth with right now. Um, and then I use Turner's watercolors sometimes, but I guess it's like the third medium. I use their gouache a lot more, so I've been getting really into painting with gouache now.
Hmm.
Um, because I mean it's just more opaque watercolor, and it's really good for giving like this really nice saturated effect. Because like you could get real painterly and blend with it, but then you can also lay down like just really nice opaque flat colors, which is something I like to do with line work. So I actually have something right here I could show you that I finished recently. It's a new character that I had came up with.
Nice.
Cool.
I
I
was at a
saw that.
tape. Oh yeah, I was at a tabling event, and it was kind of slow. So the people I was around, I said, you know what, like, let's do a drawing challenge. So I gave everybody wrote down two animals. Then
Hmm.
we switched them with each other, and you had
Oh
to
yeah.
draw a combination of the animals. So I got a bird and a rabbit, which was kind of funny. Um, and I think, yeah, so this is the sketch from that day, just pen and ink.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, so that, and then that one became the color version. And that's just Turner's gouache and what is it? Speedball India ink with a brush. Um, and yeah, so a lot of my main mediums are like pen and ink, watercolor, gouache, and then I love to mix in a lot of things. So I'm a real big mixed media person,
Hmm.
and that's something I really dabbled in when I was in school. Um, Once I started getting a foothold with the watercolor, I started throwing in color pencils, paint markers, acrylic inks, different India ink, spray paint, and things like that. That just kind of help add a little bit more to the work, whether it's texture or, just creating more dynamic color palettes. I really love throwing like everything but the kitchen sink at like a piece. Um, and I think the one behind me, if I can actually is a good example of that because I did this piece here for my senior show
Nice.
when I was
Cool.
exiting school. And it's a self portrait. Let me see, maybe I have to turn my camera. I don't know. Well, it doesn't look like it'll let me, but
Yeah, probably not
oh,
mid Zoom. I don't think it will. Well,
oh,
no,
there we
well,
go.
what do you know?
Yeah, so
Okay.
at the time I made the piece, I called it Internal Damnation,
Mm.
but now I just call it Festering.
Uh,
And it's self-portrait, it's India ink, watercolors, a lot of pen and ink, a lot of alcohol markers in there. And it's a self-portrait that I think reflected the place I was in at that time.
Mm.
Um, because it was at the end of college. I'm really trying to solidify my plans of what I want to do. I'm still dealing with expectations of things people want from me, like parents, professors, relationships and things like that. Um, but this was a piece where I felt like I was really able to like really let loose with the mixed media. And yeah, like, and just kind of show the range of like what I could do when I have, everything I want at my fingertips. So, yeah, so it's just me, calm, cool, collected, and then the madness that festers within. Um, like these little maggot guys right there, those are fun.
I,
they
I
look
must
fun.
say, I'm not a big fan of maggots.
Oh yeah, especially when they're pink, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
But yeah,
No, I like that. It's an exploration of an internal state, but very much in a way that I think would evoke feelings in the viewer. I mean, I'm sure that's what you were going for. It's like communication of your internal state in a way that would also resonate, I think, with other people.
oh yeah,
It's like, oh yeah, man, I've had days like that, or months, or seasons, or
oh yeah. It was a piece. That piece has actually only been shown twice. That senior exhibition, and then last year at a there's a traveling art show called Pancakes and Booze. Um, yeah, really, and I mean they really got it. Pancakes, beer, they got it.
hey,
Yeah, and
where
they
can I sign up?
oh yeah, they well they I don't know, they may come back to North Carolina this year because they went to Raleigh like twice last year.
Oh yeah, Raleigh has a big. Have you ever been a part of the what is it, Art Explosion that they have in Raleigh? They like cordon off like I don't know, several long streets downtown. It's a big deal. Like my wife is working her way up to making it to that one. I think it's like I don't know what it runs now, but probably $300 or $400 to rent like a spot for your booth, that kind of thing.
Mm,
So it's a little more pricey than some of the ones around here.
Go see
oh
them in
yeah.
person.
Normally, those are the ones that bring the bigger crowds, though, when they're
Oh
charging
yeah.
that much for a space.
Yeah, a lot of
Um,
foot traffic. It's like 2 or 3 days long too, I think. And
oh,
but yeah, like anyway, but yeah, that made me think of that when you mentioned Raleigh.
oh yeah. But that was the second place I showed that piece, and I probably talked about that piece more than anything else I had that night. It was probably the most I'd ever talked about it, even from the time I first made it, and I just thought it was just because the thing that's interesting is like as an artist, there's times where you're so close to your work you can't really maybe you're a little alienated from how it can still resonate with people. So a lot of the people that were close to me were telling me, you don't need to focus on making new work. You don't need to focus on making new work. Like show people what you have. if they haven't seen it, it's still new. And for that to be a piece I made like 2017, and then I show it in like 2022, and it's the most talked about thing I have on the wall. It was just kind of a testament to believing in not just what I can do, but what I have done. You know, like if the work's good, it'll hold up, and I think that night kind of taught me that. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, big mixed media piece, big mixed media piece. And also like I've been working on wood panels a lot now,
Oh,
Oh, okay,
cool.
yeah.
doing paintings. And I like these because you could really lay on with like mixed
Hmm.
media, and it's not going to warp or buckle or anything. So I got spray paint, paint markers, and
Nice.
still using that kind of flat 2D color style with the line
Hmm.
work. Um, and
Yeah, I
just
like it. The sheen there, is that from spray paint? Like the where the sheen comes in, like
actually,
like the reflective surface there on on the sides.
that's actually there's this brand called Molito that makes art products and paint markers. It's like a graffiti supply company,
Uh-huh.
but they make this marker called a liquid chrome marker. And as the name
Nice.
implies, the ink is like it's really reflective. Like, you get it kind of it really has that mirror effect.
Nice.
Um way crazier than like your average silver paint marker.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever seen. I was surprised to learn as a marker. Like, yeah, I don't think I'd ever seen anything that reflective. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. It's kind of expensive. They could get kind of pricey, but I mean, I had to get one because I'm like, I just need this.
Yep, yep.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, mixed media. That was something that influence really did come from my time in art school, though, when I just had time to explore different supplies and look at different artists. And there's an artist named Dave Cho, a painter, illustrator, adventurer, podcaster. That dude does everything now. But there's a video where he does a drawing and he kind of breaks down his process, and um not the most in depth, but he kind of just talks about generally what he's doing and how he's laying stuff down. And it may be like, I don't even think the video is more than 3 or 5 minutes. And I took that and just kind of ran with it. Like, just that basic process. And I just started playing with supplies like acrylic paint, oil paint, watercolors, whatever, just figuring out how to mix these multiple things together and make them work. And a lot of trial and error, but I think that definitely kind of helped shape the work I do now in terms of aesthetic and process. If it's not like a 1-2 combination with like the ink and the watercolor, then I'm probably inviting spray paint, paint markers, and everyone else to the party. And I think that kind of helps build like my aesthetic. Yeah.
Nice. Well, Will, do you have any more questions for Elijah before we wrap up here?
Well, it's you're hoping to get your first story done by HickoryCon. Were you thinking about self-publishing, or did you have a plan yet about how you're gonna get the book printed?
Um, I'm gonna be honest. Probably self-publishing. I haven't done like the most research yet, but in my head, I feel like that's just what makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people in comics that I really look up to normally go the self-published or the independent route. I'm a big fan of Image, um, especially Todd McFarlane.
Oh
And
yeah.
I spent a lot of time, looking at him and how they did that. And um, yeah, I think I would definitely like to go like the self-published route and at least try that out. Um, because I haven't done too much research, honestly, as far as like actually like working with a publisher. Um, So I think I'd probably feel more comfortable going the self-published route and exploring that. And then if it makes sense to publish with someone else, maybe I'll do that later. But right now, I'm still kind of in the mind of like, if I can do it myself, I'd rather do it and see what I could learn from it. Yeah, so definitely self-publish on the stories I want to put out.
Will definitely give you more
Yeah.
creative control
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
for sure. That is always, I mean, whether it's, writing music or writing stories or whatever the medium, like the more hands you have in the pot, the more people that need to get paid,
Right.
the more input or attempts at control there will be. No, that's just part of the course, I guess. But that made me think of because Will, like, I think, and you guys can both correct me if I'm wrong. Like, isn't Jeff Miller similar? Where, and I think of Stan Sakai as well. Do they do most of their own? They do both the story writing and the art, correct? Like they do the whole thing, or do they have some people that do some lettering for them, or
You
like?
said Jeff Miller. Did you mean Jeff Smith?
Sorry, did I get it wrong? Jeff Smith,
I
the Bone.
Yeah,
I'm
believe so, yeah.
displaying my ignorance here.
that's all right.
I'm more of a my bailiwick as far as our nerdy pop culture is sci-fi. I'm more of a sci-fi nerd, but I'm
Gotcha.
trying to learn as much as I can about these other realms as well.
Well,
But
Stan Sakai definitely does everything himself except color. He has colored some special editions, but normally coloring is done digitally by somebody else. I'm not sure about Jeff Smith's process.
Hmm.
yeah, it just made me think, is like, have they been able to find that balance of like being published, but still having a modicum of like maybe more control than say somebody who's working for Marvel, DC, or Dark Horse might have.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they've proven
Hmm.
themselves to a point where editors are like, you know what, do whatever because we trust you.
I actually heard Stan Sakai say that on camera before. I think it was an interview for might have been Sci-Fi Wire,
Cool.
I think on YouTube, and he's drawing Usagi Yojimbo. But I remember because when I heard him say it, I thought it was like the coolest shit ever. He was like, "Me and my publishers have this deal where I do whatever I want and they don't tell me anything." And I was like, "That's an OG right there."
Oh
Like,
yeah.
and I believed him when he said, "I'm like, yeah, they don't tell that man anything." But that was
Nice.
just like the coolest thing I heard, like a comic book artist or creator say, like, look, I do what I want. They don't tell me anything. That's it.
So are you a Usagi fan as well?
I've dabbled a little bit. I haven't jumped deep into the stories, but I did learn about Stan Sakai when I was in school.
Hmm.
So I definitely been exposed to a lot of his work. I knew a dude back then who was definitely like a huge fan of him.
Yeah,
Um,
Will would be one. He's got the full collection, and I forget. Have you met Stan? You've met Stan too, I think, haven't you, Will?
Yeah, back in 2019, he was in Charlotte.
hmm,
At the Heroes Con.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's cool.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're eventually going to do an episode dedicated to Usagi and Jimbo because that's one of Will's favorites.
Cool.
So yeah, like should be fun. Well, guys, it's getting late. We should probably wrap it up so we can be responsible adults and go to
Oh
bed.
yeah. I think
Oh
we have some
yeah.
time to work.
I gotta get up and either get my daughter ready for school or take her to school and or both tomorrow. So Elijah, thank you so much for coming on and
Thank
joining
you.
us. And like we were talking about in the kind of in the break in between segments here, we'll have to have you back on a little further in the year and see how you're doing with the self-publishing and the segments of the anthology, as it were.
Oh
And
yeah, for sure.
but yeah,
Oh
all
yeah.
right.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm glad we met and got in touch. So this is cool. And yeah, looking forward to it. And I just really enjoyed the conversation. I have to get my wife to listen to this episode too. She's a big watercolor artist, so she'll
Cool.
especially you talking about your procedures and the different mediums that you use. Like she'll resonate with a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna get her on here one of these days too. All right. Well, cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, nerds.
No
Until next
problem.
time.
Oh yeah, see y'all later.
Live.
See you later.
I'll do the sci-fi version. Live long and
Yeah,
prosper.
there we go.
All right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.